is allow people in Hawaii to be able to have access. Nice touch, huh? All right, we'll just start again. I always do that usually in the middle of the guest speaker, so I thought I'd just jump on the grenade for that one. So anyway, aloha again. Welcome to our 6th season of Human Rights, Sustainability, Campus Community Dialogue. The main goal is to be able to make sure that people in Hawaii have access to and are able to participate in the global affairs taking place and be able to shape the global issues to reflect our values and our vision for what we hope in the world. We're fortunate today to be able to have a great panel of speakers. The main theme that we're looking at today is children and youth rights. And we'll be looking at 2 perspectives. One important one that we'll begin with is we'll look at from a roadmap from the Millennium Development Goals to the Sustainable Development Goals, the human rights approach to guaranteeing those for all people in the post-2015 development process. And also looking at a case study of Taiwan and looking at Indigenous people's rights in Taiwan, enable for youth to be able to have an impact in decision making. So we'll begin first with a little overview since the last time we saw each other. Last time our focus was on GMOs and right to food. So we were fortunate to be able to have our session right before the vote in Kauai on if they would adopt labeling, or more importantly, to actually make sure that they would say what pesticides they were putting into the air. The vote happened the next day on Saturday, and their bill passed. Latest update is just this week, the 3 largest corporations have now sued the County of Kauai for adopting their measure, focusing on right to information so that people would know what pesticides are being sprayed next to their home. Because they were very concerned about the right to health. They said they saw a lot of certain situations, circumstances that didn't seem to fit in for doctors that had been there almost since statehood. So that's where we're at now with Kauai. The Big Island, Hawaii, or Moko Keawe, was also organizing a bill. So the purpose of last one that we did in November was to connect the 2 movements on 2 different islands to share their strategies, focusing on the right to information, the right to food, and the right to health. So that was an update there. Also at the UN and the global level, it was the UN Forum on Business and Human Rights. They had their 2nd session, and that was very important. The main thing people are looking at there is 2 things. The climate change agreement. Mary Robinson, former president of Ireland, spoke about that and how insignificant that will be before Paris in 2015 at the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change. And the other is the intersection of the creation of the Sustainable Development Goals. That was a big issue brought up. More corporations came to that and engaged in the 2-day conference in Geneva. The other important meeting that took place for U.S. is the U.S. Human Rights Network met in December, and that was their 10th anniversary of existing and their 5th conference that they hold every other year. And it was in Atlanta, Georgia. And the main thing there was Martin Luther King Jr. III. He spoke and really launched an economic, social, and cultural rights campaign, as well as a people-centered approach movement for the U.S. The United States in 2014 is a very important year for human rights. Will be reviewed by all 3 treaty bodies that we've actually ratified. We've only ratified 3 of the 9 human rights core treaty mechanisms. The first will be the Human Rights Committee, focusing on civil and political rights, in March. The second one will be CERD, focusing on racial discrimination, in August. And then the Convention Against Torture will be the 3rd one that will appear in. The other important thing is the UPR, the Universal Periodic Review. The civil society or the stakeholder reports are due September 1st. So 2014 will be a very busy year for human rights. And we're very excited to be able to have our panel to be able to share with you and talk about children and youth rights. Also on Friday, we're going to be having Advocacy 101, advocating for children's rights at Hawaii State Legislature. And that'll be on Friday at 12 noon. And that'll be connecting all the islands again. And that's partnering with local NGOs working on keiki rights here in Hawaii. So first, I'd like to introduce Monica and also invite Chris up from UNA USA to present her with a small gift for coming all the way from DC. I have a small lei for you.
Oh, thank you.
Monica Johnson is the Youth Engagement Manager for UNA USA in the UN Foundation. And she's going to now be able to speak with us about the important work that's taking place regarding the MDGs and what's coming up with SDGs. So thank you very much. Mahalo.
Thank you. Thank you, Josh. I'm going to try to make sure this lei doesn't get in the way of the microphone. But before we get started, would you guys mind introducing yourselves? I haven't had a chance to meet you yet. And maybe make sure you click on the microphone so everybody can hear you.
Aloha everyone, my name is Surya Darimalo. I'm come from Taiwan, Rukai tribe. Yeah. Hi, nice to meet you.
Hello.
Aloha, I'm Jocelyn, or you can call me by my indigenous name, Jinomu. And, well, actually we are here to attend a conference in Hilo. And since we're already in Hawaii, so we think it will be really nice to also visit Honolulu for just a couple of days. So that's why I contact Joshua, and he said we can join this dialogue. That's why we're here. Thank you.
Aloha, my name is Tina. I come from Taiwan. Thank you.
She's my mom.
Are you ready for us from the Big Island? We don't have the right image, actually. We have a little tiny box, but the main page, the January 21st, 2014, fills up all of the big screen. If you could switch us back to two screens. My name is Dr. Keola Downing. I'm part of the UNA board here on the Big Island, and I'm a medical interpreter for Marshallese.
Ruth, could you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Ruth Larkin, I'm the president of the UNA USA chapter here on the Big Island.
Eleanor Wolf from the chapter on the Big Island, UN USA.
Maybe we have West Oahu. Is there a person there at West Oahu in the back?
Aloha, everyone. My name is Magic Amoilongo. I'm from American Samoa and come from UH West.
Mahalo. Thank you.
Okay, fantastic. And how about these three?
Hello, my name is Jason Lin. I'm from Oahu.
Don Peel. I'm a member of the UNA here in Hawaii chapter in Honolulu, and I'm also a student at the University of Hawaii in education.
My name is Christopher Molano. I am a member of UNA in Honolulu.
Okay, fantastic. And I'm Monica Johnson. I live in Washington, D.C., but I grew up in Colorado, and I'm so excited to be here with you all today. Thanks again for coming, and we'll go ahead and get started. It sounds like most of you are pretty engaged in what the UN is, right? Nodding? Great. Well, just to recap, the UN is the only international body in the world that brings all states together on an equal playing field to solve problems that are affecting them all. So it's a world body that helps countries collaborate with each other on issues that are affecting everyone. It was founded in 1945 in the wake of World War II with only 51 member states. And today in 2013, we have 193. So it's constantly welcoming new nations into this consensus building body. So what does the UN accomplish every day? The UN is working on issues in a range from health to democracy to sustainability. It really runs the gamut. As we like to say, a problem without passports, the UN will be there to help countries collaborate on solving it. So it has the ability to bring attention to issues and galvanize action. So we like to say that the UN can convene countries and then help them set priorities among one another so they can collaborate on solving these problems without passports. I work for the United Nations Association of the USA, which is a 70-year-old organization dedicated to engaging the American public in the UN through education, political advocacy, and awareness. And for our friends from Taiwan, we're part of the World Federation of UNAs. There's one in China and one in Taiwan. that helps to inspire the public to get involved in the work of the UN, and as we like to say, inform, inspire, and mobilize. So our organization actually predates the UN. Eleanor Roosevelt would go around talking to people about why the US should take a leadership role in such an organization, and we're really proud of our history. We have 120 chapters all around the country who are working to advocate for the UN in their communities and sort of be ambassadors for the UN wherever they are. So just to keep us moving, I'm going to focus on 2 ways that you can impact the UN in 2014. So for the young people who are watching, the first part will be Millennium Development Goals and advocacy. And if you're not a youth, that's okay too. We need you to collaborate and make sure you engage in these issues as well. So who's aware of what the Millennium Development Goals are? Okay, a few people. The Millennium Development Goals were a global compact established in the year 2000. The year 2000 was a year of sort of revival and renewal, and there was a lot of enthusiasm for moving forward and making progress on many, many issues that affect people and making their lives better. So all of the member states of the UN got together and said, wow, we have this incredible opportunity to eliminate poverty within a generation here. Let's all come together and support a set of goals. Does anyone know what a SMART goal is? I really like to think about these goals in the context of a SMART goal. They're smart, they're specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and timely. So the MDGs were really smart goals. They helped galvanize action across the world and bring everyone together in support of eradicating poverty in the next 15 years. So we have 8 right now. From the year 2000 to 2015, the world was going to focus on 8 actionable items. Everything from poverty and hunger to gender equality and education to help make the world a better place. And since then, thanks to a lot of the action and support that was mobilized by these MDGs, we're really making a lot of headway on the promise to make people's lives better. Extreme poverty has decreased. Between 2000 and 2005, the total number of poor people, that means living on less than $1.25 per day, declined from 1.3 billion all the way down to 900 million, which means that we are on track to achieve the first Millennium Development Goal by 2015, which is eradicate extreme poverty and hunger. The goals pertaining to childhood lives are also particularly making headway. Childhood deaths have dropped from 12.5 million in 1990 to 8.8 million in 2008. And that's thanks to a lot of key interventions that sometimes, as Americans, we take for granted. Vaccines and sanitation, things that can improve children's lives and help them live past their 5th birthday. And then the number of children in school is increasing. So although there were 108 million children in 1999 out of school, 69 million in 2008. And then enrollment rates have also increased, and we're working on closing the gender gap, so making sure that as many girls get access to education as boys do. And then lastly, 87% of the world is now using safe drinking water, which is a big deal, and it helps us accomplish Millennium Development Goal 7 by 2015. So all of this headway has not come without some challenges. If you've been around in the last 10 years, you know that there was a huge global financial crisis that put pressure on a lot of the private sector and governments, and they sort of tightened their wallets and were having a lot of political pressure to not give money to other countries and contribute to accomplishing these goals. Climate change and higher prices for food and energy have been a huge obstacle to achieving these goals. And then, of course, the lack of capacity for implementing them. These were lofty goals, and sometimes you can't measure them or reach them in the same amount of time, but there's so much support that we're interested in reinvesting in them after 2015. So what happens after that deadline of 2015? Do you guys know who this is? One of them is Sai. Who's the other one? It's Ban Ki-moon. Ban Ki-moon is the Secretary General of the UN, and he is very committed to making sure that the next set of Millennium Development Goals after 2015 see just as much success as the first set. So he's convening people from all parts of society, not just states and their governments, but civil society, people like us, the private sector and businesses and industry, foundations and governments all coming together to really be inclusive in setting this next set of priorities. So they're considering the progress and the changes and the challenges we've had since the year 2000 to answer the question, how can we eradicate poverty from the globe by 2030? So don't look too hard at this chart, but it shows the process of setting the new set of goals between 2000 and 2015. You have the high-level panel, which was composed of representatives from member states around the world. You've got the Sustainable Development Goals, which Josh can go in-depth on a little bit later. And of course, you have the member state negotiations. And then across the bottom, you'll see that there are non-EU activities going on, things like civil society consultations, private sector consultations, feeding back into the end progress where we reach an agreement in 2015. So how has the world changed since 2015? What are the things we have to consider when we're realigning ourselves toward the next set of goals? Can you guys just throw some things out? And everyone over in, are you in Maui and Hilo? Feel free to chime in. How has the world changed since the year 2000? What about what we're using now, this ability to conference one another inter-island?
I was going to say terroristic threatening was not a problem in 2000.
And also,
20,000.
our facility here at UH Library in Hilo is limited, so we don't see anything but a little tiny picture of you, and the big screens are not operational right now, but it's better than nothing.
Okay, so technology has been a change since the year 2000. Anything else? Okay, well, let's just go through a few. One is the population. The world is much bigger than it was in the year 2000, but the planet hasn't grown in size. There are 1 billion more people today than there were in the year 2000. So we have 7 billion people right now, and we're expected to have 8 billion by 2030. So the population is growing, and it's putting more strain on our resources. More than half of those people now live in cities, so lots of people living in a smaller space using the same resources. Private investment in developing countries now dwarfs aid flows. So I think this is particularly interesting because of the commitment to cross-sector collaboration. You know, it used to be that government aid was the biggest flow of money into many of these developing countries, and now private investment has increased. So in the year 2000, who here had a cell phone? I didn't have one. One person? 2 people? So in the year 2000, 2 people had a cell phone in this room. Now who has a cell phone? Everybody has one now. So this presents a huge opportunity to change the way we make people's lives better through things like mobile health, education, and of course accessible internet. People can get any information they want at the click of a button now, which really wasn't the case in 2000. And then finally, 1.2 billion of the poorest people account for only 1% of the world's consumption. And the billion richest consume 72%. So we have a growing wealth gap, and consumption of resources has sort of shifted. And then you can't see this, but on the bottom, I guess we had some font problems, climate change. A lot of people were talking about climate change in the year 2000, but it wasn't part of the mainstream dialogue like it is now. So with all this into consideration, there are some transformative shifts that need to be implemented for the post-2015 agenda. And that's what Ban Ki-moon has really dedicated his time to in the next 2 years, is making sure this is an inclusive process, not leaving anyone behind in human rights, in economic activities, ending poverty, and really helping this permeate civil society in a way that gets everybody invested. Putting sustainable development at the core. Who knows what Rio Plus 20 was? A couple people. Rio Plus 20 was a climate change conference last summer that happened in Brazil, and they developed a set of sustainable development goals that are hopefully going to be integrated into the Millennium Development Goals. And then transforming economies for jobs and inclusive growth. I know Jason was talking about earlier how with so many more young people in the world today, half the population is under 30, we need to be more cognizant of making sure that those people have opportunities to be economically mobile. So lastly, building peace and effective, open, and accountable institutions, making sure that government works for its people, and forging a new global partnership. As I mentioned, the private sector is an increasing presence in international development, and we hope that if people can collaborate across sectors, then we'll be more effective in reaching our goals. So there's a quick message from Secretary General. I really like this quote from him because I think it's very inspirational for this new generation of people working on these issues. And he said, above all, we hope they can inspire a new generation to believe that a better world is within its reach. So I have a quick video from him.
Hello, I'm Ban Ki-moon, Secretary General of the United Nations, and I want to hear from you. The United Nations is working on a development agenda for 2015 and beyond. My World is a global survey on development priorities. Vote and tell us what issues matter most to you and your family. Go online, use your mobile phone, or send in your ballot. Make a difference, mark a difference. Take part in my World Survey and help us build a better world for all.
Great. So he is talking about something called My World 2015. Which is a global survey for the post-2015 development agenda. He's trying to get every single person out there in the world to help us prioritize issues for the forthcoming Millennium Development Goals. So how many of you have been online to take this survey? A couple of you. Okay, well the good news is I have some ballots right here. So why don't we just take a look at these issues really quick, and then we'll talk about which ones we care about. So I'm attached to the microphone here. Okay. And then for those of you on the other campuses, here's what this looks like. There are 16 issues that this initiative did pre-polling on to come up with the final set. Better job opportunities, a good education, better health care, affordable and nutritious food, support for people who can't work, freedom from discrimination, access to clean water and sanitation, reliable energy at home, action taken on climate change, protecting forests, rivers, and oceans, an honest and responsive government, better transport and roads, protection against crime and violence, equality between men and women, phone and internet access, and political freedoms. So which issues do you all think are the most important for after 2015? Let's just throw some out there.
A good education.
Education.
Global sea rise.
Global sea rise. Anybody else?
Water resources.
Water resources. Sounds like there are a lot of environmental people in the room.
Affordable and nutritious food.
Great. Anybody else? Okay, so if you go to take this survey online, you can check and see how the data is moving around the world. So who people are and what they care about. Whether they're living in Ghana or the United States, if they're a man, a woman, their age, you can break it down and see what people's priorities are for after 2015. So some of the things that people care about the most happen to be better job opportunities, a good education, and better health care. I think those are the top 4 ranked for almost every country right now, but we'll see how that changes in the next year as more people take the survey and things get more inclusive. So my challenge to all of you right now is to leave your mark on the new MDGs. See what you can do to be a part of this conversation. One thing you can do is to hold an MDG consultation. And we've been doing these around the country with UNA USA to try to get people's participation in the post-2015 process. So get people together in a room, and we have a great toolkit for this online to make sure that everyone can participate and break down these issues in a really meaningful way. a couple of examples of how young people have done this around the world. Do you guys know them? Oh, really? Oh my gosh. Did you guys participate in this?
Well, we work together. That's why So with this girl from Mexico, we worked together for a couple of years on international indigenous youth movement. So that's why I know her.
That's fantastic. Well, like she said, the folks from Mexico authored a really interesting paper on realizing the future we want in Latin America and the Caribbean and working towards an agenda for post-2015 with a specific focus on indigenous rights. So I think we're going to hear from our friends later on that, and I'm so excited. In Germany, they launched a website that consulted 500 plus youth on the post-2015 agenda. And in Sri Lanka, they did something really exciting where they took this inclusive process and turned it into action. So they founded a group called Youth Voices and essentially lobbied the Sri Lankan government to give youth with disabilities better access to job opportunities. Submitting your recommendation is easy. You can help UNA USA compile the American Consultation and do this in the form of an essay or a white paper or an interview series or a video. You can be really creative and the sky's the limit. So after this, everybody log online and take the survey at worldwewant2015.org, and we'll see where we get when everybody completes it. So at the beginning, I told you that I was going to give you 2 ways to make an impact on the UN in 2014. So one of them is leaving your mark on the Millennium Development Goals. I hope you all take advantage of this opportunity because it's a really exciting time for world citizens to come together and galvanize support for such an exciting goal. And the second is advocacy. I told you earlier that the UN accomplishes a lot every day. They provide food to 90 million people. They keep peace in 16 different countries. They're working on maternal health and environmental sustainability and vaccinating children and upholding human rights for a lot of different individuals. So with all of this activity, how much does that cost? Any guesses? How much does that cost the United States? Guess an amount that's in billions.
Well, our contributions to the UN in terms of funding, like operational budget, we give quite a bit. But in terms of ODA, like we're like 1.01, I think, percent, or 0.03, I think now of our GDP. So not that much compared to other countries.
Right. So the United States budget as a whole, that green pie right there, is pretty big. It's hard to even visualize it in terms of a number. But 1.57% of that number is international spending, and that includes everything international affairs related, from UN contributions to other international organizations, the entire State Department, all of USAID, embassies, and much, much more falls into that little blue slice of the pie that's 1.57%. So it's $51.8 billion total, and only 6 to 8 billion of that is to the UN. So it's a fraction of a percent of the US budget. And we're getting a lot of bang for our buck. I think there are 3 ways that the UN can affect US leadership in the world. The first is economic benefit. This is a great statistic that for every $1 our nation contributes, we receive more than $1.60 back. So it's an investment in world affairs that has high dividends for us. That money we get back is in the form of peacekeeping being a less expensive alternative to American military action. The UN is stationed in New York, so anytime there's construction going on in the UN, those are American companies. The second is security benefit. What happened last year that was a huge security win for the United Nations? Chemical weapons in Syria. The UN was able to facilitate diplomacy on that, and hopefully we'll see how things turn out but make our world a lot safer. And then lastly, the diplomatic benefit. So we talked about the Millennium Development Goals and how all of you can make a difference. But if we all start working on that, that's a way for the US to show leadership on an issue that affects everyone, and that's eliminating poverty. So the UN can help us build consensus, and the US can take advantage of that opportunity. But public opinion really matters here. So what are some perceptions of the UN, negative or positive, that you guys hear in your community, in Taiwan or in Hawaii or wherever?
I hear people saying that it's a world government, and I also hear people who are pessimistic about the United Nations say that it's ineffective.
Mm-hmm.
So Taiwan is not a member of UN. We are not recognized as a country. So this is a big challenge you are having now, because it's at the end, it's still a governmental organization. Mm-hmm. So a lot of things, when it comes to some sensitive political issues, like, for example, Taiwan will have no say in a lot of things.
Mm-hmm. Anybody else? How about
for the Marshallese people, I'm speaking now, and the problem is that the United Nations has not pushed very hard on the United States for the abuses that the United States have done to the people of the Marshall Islands. They have very limited response to what happened with the 67 nuclear test bombs done there. And when people come over here, it is more difficult for a person from the Marshall Islands to become a citizen of the United States than from anywhere else in the world. There's all kinds of hurdles to that. Currently, it would realistically take about 26 years if you have a child that is born in the United States.
Okay. Any other public opinion things you guys hear about the UN? Negative or positive too? Okay. So even though the UN has some flaws, the bottom line is it's the only international body that's bringing countries together to solve problems. And like we explored a few minutes ago, even though there are some flaws in the ways it works, it's accomplishing things that the US or any country could never do on its own. And so I think that's one of the main reasons that 8 out of 10 voters in the US support the UN. We did some bipartisan polling and found out that people overwhelmingly believe that the United States should play an active role in the UN and really take hold of that opportunity to be in a leadership position. And that's why it's important to engage in grassroots advocacy. So this is what you guys are doing with your movement for Indigenous rights. It's what the UNA chapters are doing in Hawaii and all around the country. And we really hope that you'll engage in grassroots advocacy to add more voices to the conversation. When you engage in grassroots political advocacy like this, you are creating this potential power to shape public policy that trickles up to leaders who you really need to hold accountable because you voted for them. And so when you get together in forums like this, in the movement that you guys are starting in Taiwan, in the UNA chapters, you're creating this potential power that can be exercised when we really need it. And we really need it because public perception affects how the UN can get its work done around the world. So just to sort of explain how this works, I know all of you have been pretty engaged, but talking about advocacy, we like to look at it sort of in this chain. So you guys are voters, you elect people in Congress, and then those voices of support and funding mechanisms are decided in US legislative bodies. So even though foreign assistance is less than 1% of the US budget, and UN dues are a fraction of that, you can see how that can become very politicized when there's financial constraints to our country, the budget is being cut, and when those times happen, we need strong voices of support in Congress. So like I said, it's so important that you engage in grassroots advocacy to add more voices to the conversation. So even though some voices may be very loud, you can have a very outsized impact on issues like this. To give you an example of how political this can get, in the fiscal year 2014 congressional appropriations process, we saw a lot of division between the House version of the funding bill and the Senate version. The House side cut $37 million to UNFPA, which, as you saw, is a pretty small portion of our budget, but it seems like a really big number. And then the Senate State Foreign Operations bill was sort of on the other side, so allowing the U.S. to fund UNESCO, repealing the global gag rule, and showing more of a leadership role on the international stage and with the UN. So it's so important that you get to your members of Congress and encourage them to be supportive of the UN as grassroots advocates. So how can we get involved with grassroots advocacy? Has anyone here ever met with their legislator? A couple of you? Josh, would you like to share what that meeting was like?
We try to just share the important issues of how we're involved here in Hawaii. And one of the things looking at in the future is to actually make it a forum on human rights, domestic and foreign policy before they get elected. So in between the primary and the general, we want to do that. So they just know that there's a constituency group that cares about certain issues and make the connections that what happens in Hawaii is also very important in DC and around the world.
Awesome. So building that constituency, so when leaders need help on an issue, they know who to call. What about you, Chris?
My experience has been here, like at just raising the awareness of what's going on in our state and how it affects at the international level. Like, for example, speaking with my representative, Henry Aquino, I found out, like just in conversation that they're really not that aware, especially at the local level. So I see that as our opportunity in terms of like saying, you know what, at the state level, we may not be, the country may not be a signature to the Kyoto protocols, but then we have like the Majuro Declaration, which our state is a signature to. So maybe we can educate our local legislators on how to get global issues affected here, and implemented here locally.
That's really fantastic. Both of you gave great examples of building grassroots constituencies and not only raising awareness among the people who are voting and making decisions, but also raising awareness locally and being, like I said, an ambassador for the UN in your local community. And I think that's as important in the US as it is in Taiwan and all around the world. So that's just one of the ways you can raise awareness. You can go online and talk about the UN, inform your community, your school, your family about what the UN is and what it does. Hold events on your campus and thank your legislators for their leadership when they support the UN. So Campus Advocates is the United Nations Association Youth Engagement Initiative for college students. I think this is particularly important for Jason as he's going to be in college next year? Year after next year. 2 years, okay. Well, we're launching a nationwide movement of young people who support the United Nations. So we want you to educate, advocate, and spread the word. So educate yourself and others about the UN, what it is, what it does, and why it's important. Advocate to U.S. leadership or wherever your leadership is on what the UN is and how the U.S. can take a leadership role and why it benefits us in that way. And then finally, spread the word. So be a representative for the UN in your community and talk to your communities about what the UN is. We've had campuses all across the country get pretty creative with these events. International fashion shows to raise money for vaccines, guest speakers, symposiums. This is Carthage College in Wisconsin. They painted the rock for UN Day. They did a blue and white day where everybody dressed in blue and white, and then they educated people who asked, hey, why are you wearing blue and white about the UN? Do an advocacy day, go to your representatives or your senators in district or on the Hill, UN roundtable, documentaries, culture fair. The sky's the limit. And we also have some resources for you to use on this. So we have a toolkit online, issue briefs and advocacy updates that are super relevant, and we try to keep them up to date. Calls to action, national headquarters, that's me, so give me a call anytime when you need support with something like this. Our chapter network, and then our Global Classroom student network. So you guys are part of a huge student young people movement for the UN. And that gives me a lot of inspiration for the next 15 years. And I'm only here for today, but we want you to tell your story. So blog for UNA USA, promote your project on social media, and then, of course, find us on Facebook and Twitter, and keep in touch. All right, so that's all I have for you guys. I hope you learned the 2 ways you can make an impact on the UN this year. Does anybody have any questions?
How did it go? I know that, well, I used to work with the youth delegates at the General Assembly and the ECOSOC commissions. And recently we had, I think 2 years ago, we finally had a youth observer from the United States, you know, something that I've been working on, pushing for a long time. So it's not necessarily a delegate, but an observer, which is better than nothing. How did it go for the first couple of years, and is it something that likely to continue?
I'm really glad you asked that question because that's something new that the UN Association is facilitating with the State Department, and we're so excited to be in the 2nd year of the program. The first year we had Brooke Loughran, who was a student at Boston College, and she spent her year observing what the UN is doing and seeing how that impacts youth and then trying to bring it back to her community. And in the 2nd year, we have Tiffany Taylor, who is a student at Columbia University, so she's right in New York. She's at the UN all the time. And the goal of the program is really to get the American youth voice elevated at the UN. So she goes to UN meetings and then tries to bring that back to American youth and then engage with them in order to, you know, go back to the UN and say, hey, this is what's really impacting people. It's called an observer because with the US State Department, there are issues with classifying someone as a delegate. But she participates in all the same activities as other countries' youth observers do, or youth delegates. So we open applications for that in August. So for anyone who's listening, who's under age 25 in August, please apply. Yes. So we'll be spreading the word about that soon. And you can also follow her on Twitter, and you can check out her blog, both at unausa.org. All right. Well, without further ado, I think I'm so excited to hear you guys' presentation, so I'll turn the mic over to you.
Okay. All right. Aloha. In Hawaiian, that's my language, meaning aloha. So thanks again for having me here. And well, today I just want to share about like some experiences and some, I won't put it as a movement, but some actions we took or we've been taking since 2000, or for myself since 2006 at a local, UN level and back home at local level. And also it's some, so just to showcase the potential and strength of Indigenous youth internationally and locally. And you can, I will explain about the pictures a bit later. That's the pictures we took, like this was from last year. And just as you can see, this is a map of Indigenous peoples around the world. So in Asia, like in total, it's, it's almost 2% of the total global population. And most of Indigenous peoples are in Asia, as you can see. But as the same to the non-Indigenous population, over 50% of us are living in urban areas. That's something like we are common with the non-Indigenous population. And first part, I will talk about the Global Indigenous Youth Caucus. At first, we are under the United Nations Permanent Forum on Indigenous People, Indigenous Issues. It's under ECOSOC, and it's almost like it's held every year around May or end of April. And this picture is taken last June in Alta. this is another process we're taking now. It's in a way because in 2014, in September, there will be a so-called World Conference on Indigenous Peoples, but actually it's a high-level plenary meeting of the GA. But they will give us 9 hours talking about global indigenous issues. And since 2012, we're in the process of preparation because it's still a governmental, a more political process. But for indigenous peoples around the world, we want to have a say in this process. We really want to influence something. So since 2012, the indigenous peoples from the world are conducting a serious preparatory meetings and a lot of preparatory works until now. And this is the youth participants in Alta when we are having this World preparatory meeting for the World Conference. We have a short video about who we are. I don't know if we can, maybe just the beginning. No, is it working? Oh, yeah. I'm Jocelyn from the Millennium tribe of Taiwan.
And I'm Manuel from the Quechua Nation of Peru. We know it's a great honor to be present when a statement representing us is read.
But being a member of the Indigenous Youth Caucus requires a lot of commitment and responsibility. During every session of the United Nations Permanent Forum on Indigenous Issues, it's hard not to notice that when the Indigenous Youth Caucus speaks, our members will stand behind us in full solidarity and support.
Madam Chair, we thank you for your time.
The annual United Nations Permanent Forum on Indigenous Issues has become an important occasion for us to gather, exchange, share, and generate collective ideas and recommendations to voice out our concerns and collaborate on issues pertaining to our peoples. The Indigenous Youth Caucus was thus established to provide an open and free platform to give voice to younger generations and to hear their concerns. We are premised on inclusiveness, communal decision-making, and respect of all peoples.
The Indigenous Youth Caucus was formally inaugurated in 2006 and convened every day during the annual session of the Permanent Forum.
Just show a bit of the video we made about the Youth Caucus. And we made it just from, we have no funding, so it's all from us. We wrote the transcript, we wrote the script, and this guy Manuel, who is also like the other host of the video, he made all these things out from his work because he's working on some kind of media and he just used his free time to edit this video just so we have something to show people what is Indigenous Youth Caucus. And so as you can see, we're from different countries, different peoples, and since 2002, the first meeting of the UN Permanent Forum on Indigenous Issues, a lot of young people went there and they gathered together and talk about Indigenous youth issues. Well, actually, a lot of times, the issues we're talking about are not so different from the issues the adults are talking about. It's just sometimes we have different perspectives, or sometimes we just have different opinions, different recommendations, and sometimes those recommendations are not so in favor of the adults, but we have to talk about that, and that's why we gather together at that time. And you can see that this was taken in 2010, and this is, I think, 2012. We got a lot of more members from Latin America. At first, the Youth Caucus members are most of them are from Asia and North America because of the language. But now we have more from Latin America because we figure out to have interpreters every time when we're having our meetings. And that's a really important step we took to engage more youth from different parts of the world. And you can see us, this was in 2006. And at that time, we didn't have a space for a meeting. We don't have a regular time for meeting. We just met in the back of the conference room, sit on the floor and start talking. Sometimes the chairperson got angry about us because we are in the back and kind of disturbing in a way. But because of this, in the next year, 2007, 2008, we got a conference room because people saw us and they realized how important it is to have a space for the youth in this kind of meeting. And this is 2008 when we are giving a statement. All the members of the Youth Caucus will stand behind the person who is giving the statement because all of our statements are based on consensus. So it's not someone or certain group of people leading the discussion or something. Every sentence we put in our statement is by consensus from Indigenous youth around the world. And also in recent years, we are not only trying to get consensus from the people who can be so lucky to be there in New York. We also use Facebook, we use emails to send around the statements to the people who cannot come to New York and try to get them involved. Or at least they will know what we are going to talk about. There's this kind of, because we have a lot of difficulties to have members from all different countries, but this is a way we try to coordinate more people and engage more people in this process. And you can see all the recommendations, we try to reflect as Indigenous youth what we are thinking, what we want from the government, what we want from the UN, also for what we want from ourselves. So for our recommendations, we always put ourselves first. What we are going to do to achieve certain goals, but in this process, what kind of assistance we will need from the government, from the UN, from different actors. And every day during the sessions of the UN Permanent Forum, it's 2 weeks, and we meet every morning at 8:30 until 10-ish, and then noontime, and then sometimes nighttime. And then we also sometimes we also need some drinks for relax. So we set up a rule, so okay, we finish this statement by 10, then we can go have a drink, and then we go home and sleep, and then next morning, 8:30 sharp again. So we're trying to build up a routine or kind of a model that we play hard, but we, of course, before we play hard, we work really hard. And we are getting some kind of really good feedback, because at first it was we are chasing people around in the conference room saying, hey, you're from UNICEF, please, do you want to listen to us? Maybe we're here, we have something, we have some statement, we have blah, blah, blah. But now it's that people will contact us before the meeting and ask us what we think, and also invite us to different kinds of meetings. So this is kind of switch we think it's not even, it's around 10 years, but this atmosphere is already changing. So it's kind of achievement in a way. And also we have kind of a preparatory meeting. It's more like a training starting in 2011. It's the Sunday before the formal session starts for the Permanent Forum. So in this one day, we have some basic human rights training, because for a lot of youth, especially in recent years, we have very, very young youth coming to the UN. Like this last year, we have the youngest one we have is, I think, 12. So it's very encouraging to have so many younger and younger generation came to UN, but we have to prepare them and also prepare ourselves. That's why we have this preparatory meeting starting in 2011. Again, we have no money, so we knock on people. We just email around a lot of people saying, maybe you can contribute $100 or $50. Well, that will help a lot. So we have this every year since 2011. So we have basic human rights training. We have them talk about their issues. We have them talk about what kind of recommendations they have. So this one is very short. but we are a bit better prepared because during the Permanent Forum, it's like 2,000 people in the room. It's really a mess in a way. So if we don't get more preparation, sometimes we got lost. And a lot of youth, they got really frustrated in this process because they don't know who to talk to, they don't know who to go to, they don't know like who they can go for certain issues. And during these preparatory sessions, we will give some more information for them so they can have a better direction during these 2 weeks. And also in 2011, as I said, at first we had to chase people around in the conference room, but now we have the UN agencies come to us and want to be partnered with us, and also in cooperation with some kind of events. Like this one is a side event held in 2011 about Indigenous youth initiatives to promote and protect the rights of Indigenous peoples. So we invited Indigenous youth from different continents to talk about what they do back home. Like from then, it's not from the UN agency ask them to saying that, oh, you can do this, you can do that, or it's not from the government having some initiatives and have the youth conduct it. It's really from the Indigenous youth themselves, from the community. They thought about, okay, what can I do for my people, for myself, for my community? And they have all these initiatives, and which is very inspiring because sometimes it's a very small, it's a very simple action. For example, this one girl from Las Vegas, she shared about, it's just like an after-school a company program that the children can go to her and they talk about homework, they talk about their lives. But because of this, like in a couple of years, the graduate rate for the Indigenous children in her community increased for a certain percentage. It's because they got more confidence. And they know if they got some challenges, they got difficulties, they know someone to go to. It's something really simple, but very important. And also beyond at first we only met in the PFII, but afterwards we go beyond that. First, we try to build up communications between sessions. It's not only we meet in person during the Permanent Forum, but we also talk about a lot of issues, and also we try to coordinate a lot of actions through internet. And it's not only we have the Facebook and Google group. You can search for it, United Nations Indigenous Youth Caucus. We also have a fan page now. It's a Global Indigenous Youth Caucus. You can find it on Facebook. And also we attend different meetings, like the expert mechanism on the rights of Indigenous peoples. We also go to a lot of climate change meetings or a lot of different meetings related to Indigenous peoples. And we also try to start writing something. So we have this report on global Indigenous youth and their participation in decision making. We try to make a survey and ask whatever we know, to provide information about their people, how their Indigenous youth participate in decision making locally, nationally, and internationally. And this report was briefly introduced during the expert mechanism on the rights of Indigenous peoples meeting. Also, we conducted an online photo campaign. It's about climate change. It was 2 years ago. We have this slogan, Indigenous peoples are not for sale. And we collect pictures from around the world. Indigenous youth, non-Indigenous, whoever who cares about climate change, who cares about our environment, we ask them to put up this sign saying Indigenous peoples are not for sale. And just ask them to, and we sent all these pictures to I think that was COP16, I think. But we didn't get any response. But anyway, we try to make a lot of people get to know what is climate change and why Indigenous peoples is very important in this kind of negotiation. So at least this awareness raising, and we got more people to start talking about it. And then also now we are often consulted by the government and the UN, different UN agencies. We participate and influence like decision-making process. And we have partners from different perspectives, from different areas of work. And also we kind of becoming a role model that a lot of people will come to us and ask us to share our experience, how we coordinate the youth from different countries and like our working method, all these things. So in 10 years, we have quite good progress in a way, I think, but of course a lot should be done. And this is a UN expert group meeting on Indigenous Youth 2013 last year. And so at this meeting, some youth are invited as experts, which is what we are trying to promote or trying to advocate in the past 10 years, that we are our own experts. If we're talking about Indigenous youth, we have to have the Indigenous youth on the table. We don't, of course, like a lot of people, they have different expertise, a lot of knowledge, but we are the one who are living as Indigenous youth. And you're talking about something about us, then we should be there. So this is something that we see that as a great achievement, that within these 7 youth, 5 of them are our members. So it's something that we kind of send our messages within the past 10 years, and finally they got it, that they will have us on the table when we are talking about youth. And this is something we're trying to push for in other in other areas of work, that if we're talking about university education, then we should have university students, not just the experts or the scholars. It's different. So that's something. So when we are talking about children's rights, we should have children. So that's one thing we are trying to push for. And back home, so this is like our experience at the international level. But then back home, we also trying to do something similar to what we are doing at the UN. That this is, you can see, I have 2 members here with me. That's Iwa and Sulap. That's in our indigenous traditional attire. They was taken last May in New York when we are participating. So what we are trying to do is that we connect what we've learned or what we've experienced at the UN back home with the youth back home, and also try to raise their awareness and take some actions at a local level. And this is what we are trying to really push for, is that before we can start talking about all this vision or our dreams or our goals, we have to act first. Because we've seen a lot of people, they build up a beautiful world by their mouth, but not by their action. So what we're really trying to do is we go on the street, we go on the protest, but we also do a lot of discussion, we do a lot of research, so we know what we are talking about. And for us, we try to have it's more like workshops or just some sharing sessions every 2 or 3 weeks, talk about different issues. Like this term, what we are talking about is indigenous traditional knowledge. We gather young people, and every time we set up a topic about indigenous traditional knowledge, and we have people get some brief introduction, and then we talk about the topic and also other relevant issues. And so you can see this is when we are having our sharing sessions. And why we are doing this, one important concept we have is that if we're going to tell people about something, first, we have to have real experience in this kind of issue. We cannot just build on what we are going to talk about on internet. Because a lot of time people use secondary information and come up with a theory or come up with some kind of statement which is detached from the reality. And then because of that, a lot of people will make really bad decisions for the people who are really in need. So one thing we are very concerned about is that if we want to come up with a recommendation, we want to come up with kind of statement, it has to be real. It has to really reflect the real voice, not just something we imagine. So we always say we use our creativity, but we don't use our imaginary that much because it's really different. And also, through this process, we are trying to build up our own identity. Who am I? I can talk about what kind of message am I sending to people, and probably I should explain more about this picture on your which side is that? Right? Left? Okay. On the left, it's very wrong actually. They are wearing our traditional attire, but it's not 100% correct. And also, they are holding hands like this, but in our culture, we hold our hands like this because it's also like a certain kind of message that when we open our arms, we can embrace the world, and we can be, we can have solidarity when we open our arms. But this is very wrong because they are not indigenous youth themselves, but they are trying to perform our culture, and with the wrong message. And on the other picture, I met these two young gentlemen. They are from Brazil. It was 2 years ago. And the middle one, he was 15. And on the, I don't know, the other side, he was 19. And they flew all the way from Brazil to New York to attend a permanent forum with this attire. And I asked them, why? They say, because this is representing who I am. This is my culture, this is my identity. So they were very insisting on wearing their traditional attire, saying, and they are really proud of it, which is very valuable in a way because for a lot of indigenous youth nowadays, they don't like to wear their traditional attires. They don't want to show people who they really are. So this is very, I often show these pictures to people because we have to be really careful about what kind of message we are sending, no matter while dressing or words or singing or dancing. We're sending a message to people, especially sending when we are at, when you're at the international, for example, we're at UN. A lot of people, they might not know there is indigenous peoples in Taiwan. Whatever we say, they take it. So if we're saying something bad, they think it's real. That's why we have to be really careful. And if we're wearing something actually really wrong, they think, oh, that's how indigenous peoples are wearing in Taiwan. And it's dangerous. So that's why we are very careful, and that's why we try to build it from locally, that at home we will know, we'll have this very clear concept, clear idea about who we are, what is our culture, what is our tradition, and how it is in the modern society nowadays. So that's basically what we are doing locally. And since last June, we started a kind of campus tour that we went around different campuses or communities to share our experience at the UN, let more people know about the UN, let more people know what is the UN Permanent Forum on Indigenous Issues, what is the International Indigenous Movement, and like what kind of rights we are having, we are enjoying now, and how why we have this kind of rights. So I think until now we had more than 10 sharing sessions and workshops with indigenous youth in Taiwan. We went to different counties in Taiwan and engaged with different indigenous youth from different indigenous peoples. In Taiwan, we have 14 indigenous peoples, indigenous nations in a way. So also we try to have them talk about themselves, not just receiving all the messages. More important is they have to express it, how they can express it, and don't be afraid of saying something. So we're doing sharing and a lot of workshops on campuses. And also this is one of the events we participated in. We kind of assist in the discussions among indigenous youth about different topics. Also, this is another campus tour we did. And on the other hand, we're also trying to participate in different kinds of issues. So this one is something maybe people from UH system can also have some feedback, because just very recently, this was just last month, we have a serious land dispute between National Taiwan University, which is the best university in Taiwan, and the local indigenous community. So the university had its farm within the traditional territory of the indigenous peoples at one of the mountains in the middle part of Taiwan. And because of the local indigenous people, they are still using the land. They are planting some vegetables, and they are still living on the land and use the land for some for their living. And the university sued the local people, saying that they illegally occupy the land of the university, but the land is actually belongs to the community. And the university won. This, which is really something, made us really angry. So we had a group of young people talking about this case, and we try to find different kinds of argument we can have against the university, from history, from the rights of indigenous peoples, and from the regulations we have in Taiwan, just to negotiate with the university, but also negotiate with the legislators who is kind of trying to solve the problem now. So we got pretty good response so far, because when we talk about history of the farm, the members or the representative, actually the principal of the university, he didn't know it. So he couldn't really respond because he didn't know it, and we know that we won this battle, well, at least this one, because we brought up something they didn't know, and which is very strong, that they have to admit that this land is the traditional territory of the indigenous peoples. So this is one, and I know in UH system you have the same, similar situation with the campus and the traditional territory of indigenous peoples. We actually talk about this case here in Hawaii within our working group. And this is the land which is in the farm of the university, but the owner of this land has been here for at least 3 generations, so long before the university came. So what we are trying to do locally and internationally is about self-awareness of the indigenous young people. We have to first have the awareness to know what is wrong, what is right, what is strange. So we try to figure out why it's strange, why it doesn't seem right, doesn't seem good. And then we can have our following actions. Then we can achieve self-determination. So this is the basic concept we have, awareness. And that's why we are doing a lot of sharing and workshops, because a lot of young people nowadays, they don't think about it. They know, okay, I'm indigenous, and that's it. They don't know why I can tell people I'm indigenous, because as an indigenous, it's more than the blood you have. It's all about your knowledge also. It's about your identity. It's about how you behave, about how you talk about yourself. It's a lot of things. So we have to bring this message out to more indigenous youth, the younger indigenous brothers and sisters, so they know who they are and they know what does that mean as an indigenous person. So this is also another message we are trying to build as an individual, what it is as an indigenous person, and as a whole indigenous peoples, a whole nations in a way, what we can do, what kind of message we are sending out, or what kind of actions we should take to maintain our identity as an indigenous person and as whole indigenous peoples. So besides that, we kind of use our social media. We have a platform we also have a blog, and we have a platform, a fan page on Facebook to send out a lot of messages, because internet is very useful in this way when we cannot physically connect to people, but we can use internet to spread out the information. So we translate new indigenous news and information about Taiwan indigenous people to English, and we translate international indigenous information to Chinese. So it's a platform for information exchange. So basically that's my part, but I think my question or okay.
More of a comment, because I was there in the permanent forum in 2006-2007. The chair was a Filipina.
Yeah.
Then, and I do remember we had no place to meet, and I do remember that because of Patience Stevens. I don't know if you remember her, Patience Stevens at the youth program, and Fred Dalton. They finally gave us a place to meet. Like, it was like 7 o'clock, 7:30 in the morning before any of the meetings started, and the room is such a small room.
I remember that room.
And but yeah, it was always the Taiwanese youth would always take the lead in at least making sure getting the people organized. You know, I remember the Sami people there. I remember some of them from Bolivia, but I do remember that, and I'm so proud to see now after 10 years. You know, like no, not 10 years. It's like 2006, 2007. So about 6-7 years after I left, that it's gotten so far. So I'm really happy. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, I think it's also because as Taiwanese, we have very limited space internationally. So we have to really figure out a way that we can have our voice included. That's the first thing, because a lot of times, doesn't matter how hard we push for it, like people will say, "Oh, okay, we got it," and then it didn't reflect in a statement or something. So that's why we try to be really active in this youth process, because we know that it's not only about us, because there are a lot of indigenous peoples that are not recognized, and they are really they are having really bad disadvantage because of that. So that's one of the reasons why the Taiwanese indigenous youth are very active in this process. Yeah. So I think Iwan wants to share something about. Still? No? Yeah? No? Okay. Well, like, her part is actually about some, because she's working as a language revitalization assistant. And what she's doing is, at the local level, we have this local indigenous tribal college, which is organized or operated by NGO. Although it's with college, but it's more like in a community base, and people can come, and it's not like real college. It's more for like adult education. But what they are trying to push for is to revitalize their indigenous language at local level. They bring the language back to families. So they encourage the families to start talking with their own languages at home, not just take the language as a course, but really use it, which is really like fantastic work that like, really young kids started to talk in their own languages, but we are just started. That's why we were in Hilo, because there was this stabilizing indigenous language symposium in Hilo just last week. So, yeah. Okay. Any further comments or questions?
There is a news story today.
You have to hit the microphone so I can hear.
I have a comment from Hilo.
Okay.
Okay.
Hilo first.
I wanted to encourage.
Our time with the 5 minutes. So we have 5 minutes. So for everybody, we have one question here and one question there. So definitely Hilo, and then go ahead.
It's a comment, not a question. I would encourage the youth to make a future for interpreters, because we don't have enough interpreters. I'm getting too old to do it. And when you try to get a new interpreter, there's no future for it. So we may have to legislate civil service positions or figure out a way to make a path for the future of interpreters for all the languages. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
All right, there's a there you go. News story today about the indigenous people in Ecuador who are currently fighting Chevron, major litigation, and losing, sometimes winning, sometimes losing. Are you in contact with them, and have you heard their story? And do you think that is something that can add to the efficacy and the power of your movement by getting involved in something like this on a litigation level?
Okay, thank you. Well, I've heard about it, but unfortunately we're not really in contact with indigenous youth from Ecuador. But we'll put this to what we will be talking about, like discussing about in our future work. But one thing we are still struggling for is our participation actually at international level, because a lot of time we only have a few selected indigenous youth at the negotiation table. But a lot of times we are still fighting for this space. But of course, this will be something we will be really looking at. Like we participated, more like a supported in the land dispute in the Philippines past few years. So this will be something we will be looking at in the future. Thank you.
I can say we work with them with a couple of the NGOs I work with, Land is Life, and others have been very active working with the indigenous peoples in Ecuador and bringing people from the affected communities to the UN to speak for themselves. So that's something that we definitely do. I know we only have a minute left. I just want to thank everyone in Hilo at West Oahu, also our speakers, Monica and Jocelyn in Janimu. At the UN, I know we brought 8 students last year from University of Hawaii, West Oahu, and we really thank you for allowing them to participate with the UN Indigenous Youth Caucus, and we also meet up with the UN Foundation. So we thank both of you very much in coming to share with us. And we have themes for the next 2. We'll meet in February on February 14th, and we'll also meet in March, and we'll also meet in April. So if anyone has other themes that they'd like to discuss or issues that they want to put at the agenda, it's always open, and we just try to mobilize that way. Like I said, on Friday we'll have one more round. We normally do one a month, but we're working with the local caregivers society to do one on Advocacy 101 at the state legislature. So if people want to, they can meet up on Friday as well at 11 a.m., a new time. Normally it's noon. But we'd like to thank also everyone in Hilo for participating. I think we have Professor behind in the back row. I'm not sure if that's you, but I wanted to thank you for coming. And we'd like to work together on the Model UN and work on those programs together. Maybe together we can have that as a program for one of the times, or we can do a MDG or SDG consultation together between our campuses. So I know we're running out of time, but I really want to thank our Indigenous guests from Taiwan. Thank you so much for coming. We enjoy working with you in New York. I know we spoke there together. And we'll see everyone next month. But mahalo. Thank you so much. Cool.